So Delvis, the Atlanta Hawks, I was going to call them the Falcons, the Atlanta Hawks on Monday had planned to have a Magic City celebration. And for those that don't know what Magic City is, it's an adult entertainment place in Atlanta, a world renowned entertainment place. And so they had it planned, and then the commissioner came down and canceled it. Are you surprised that it was canceled? Are you surprised that they even attempted to have this night?
I mean, Magic City. When you think of Atlanta, you think of Magic City. A lot of in a lot of instances, Lou Williams, who used to play with the Hawks, remember he was famous for the lemon pepper wings. I just think it's a lot of people being sanctimonious. Um, a lot of those people are probably Trump supporters. The same people that say you shouldn't have Magic City also back somebody who has 34 felonies and is responsible for sexually assaulting women and possibly children. So you just got to consider the source. Um, they're gonna have an after party in Magic City anyway. Thongs up, bras down. I guess I don't know, but I've never been there. I it doesn't interest me. But Magic City was synonymous with Atlanta, and some people just Luke Cornett, who was one of the leading voices against it, he was the one complaining. And if you look at Luke Cornett and probably figure he didn't got tricked off, that's why he's mad. You look at him; he's a dead cat on the line.
Welcome to the Sports Brothers podcast. I'm Branson Wright with my boy Delvis Valentine. We're here to bring you a show with our great guests. Coming later in the show is CBS and analyst Clark Kellogg, and it goes without saying. Go ahead, Delvis. What class is he from?
The illustrious class of 1979.
So Clark will be on later in the show to talk about the NCAA tournament. We're also going to talk about the NBA, how the Pistons are falling and the Celtics are rising. NFL free agent signings, Isaiah Thomas, the original Isaiah Thomas. He had a speech at Jesse Jackson's celebration of life recently, and it was, if you can go to YouTube, it was just a fantastic speech. So those are the things we're going to talk about. So Delvis, let's go right into NFL free agency. The Raiders spent a lot of money. There were some players going to other teams that I was surprised about. Seattle, as is become normal when Super Bowl teams win, they lose a lot of their players. So, what was your early impressions on how the NFL free agency has gone so far?
Even before that, the Detroit Lions, uh, they traded their running back, and one of the things that made their offense, well, it wasn't that last year they just had a bad offensive coordinator, I think, but part of their success is having two excellent running backs, and with Gibbs and your homeboy Montgomery. They traded Montgomery, and now they're going to have to find another Montgomery. I think because you don't want Gibbs to get worn out. Um, and then their left tackle, um, Taylor Decker, retired. I mean, that doesn't make sense. You have two members of your starting unit, and then also the Texans. The Texans traded their starting right tackle to the Browns, and I forgot who they traded. They traded either a guard or center named Scruggs. My thing is, why would you trade a position of strength? It doesn't make sense, and turn it into a position of weakness. That those are the ones that really before free agency and free agency. How much money did the dumb Raiders paid a center. Come on, man. Come on, bro. He getting paid like a left tackle.
He's getting paid big time. But if you go back, and I know football has changed, but if you go back to the Bengals' first pick, way back when they first started their team, was a center. Paul Brown felt that a center was the most important person on the offensive line. So the one thing about the Raiders, and of course, they had to overpay anybody going to them. They have to build that offensive line if they're going to draft a quarterback with their first pick. They're going to have to protect him. So I think they knew they were going to have to overpay. So they did.
They
That's
just didn't
exactly what they had to
overpay.
do.
What are you, like 28 million a year?
Yes.
So how are you going to afford to fortify the rest of your offensive line if you're paying your center? Because whoever you're going to get at left tackle is going to want more than the center. Whoever you get at right tackle is going to want more than the center. So I mean, they they do what the Raiders do. I mean, the only team that does more dumb moves than them are Jimmy Haslam's Cleveland Browns. They do dumb stuff, even though they did do a couple of moves that people are panning with the offensive line with Zion Johnson and Howard from the Texans, and a lot of it, man. It's just it's just the media being who the media are. If a brother come and replace a white dude, to a lot of these people in the media, not all, but they say, oh no, you're going to replace Jack Conklin with him. And but I think that they're going to move DeJuan Jones inside the guard. That's what I think they're going to do, and probably draft a left tackle. The Browns drafting a left tackle, and then they have to get a center. Green Bay cut their center, Elston Jenkins. I think that's how it's pronounced. Longtime center, all pro center, and he's also an all pro at guard. Um,
You think he'd be a good fit here in Cleveland?
absolutely. But I think no matter what, the Browns made a dumb decision as head coach, man. You got Todd Monken, who every he's had one opportunity in college to be a head coach and 33%. And like I stated last week, he says that he could have made his relationship with his quarterback better. And the Browns decide to hire this guy. Just like Kevin Stefanski, I told people, and I don't want to make everything black and white, but what's black and white is, I got to call it. I told people, Penix days are numbered in Atlanta, Jack. Kevin Stefanski don't want no more brothers. What do? They signed Tua to a contract. And don't be surprised if he gets another quarterback in there. Now, granted, Penix has been hurt. I give that. But, man, how does the worst 32nd ranked coach, according to players, get another head coaching job, bro? Something stinks.
Well, who has stunk lately has been the Pistons. And you're getting into this part of the season where the players are looking forward to the postseason, and sometimes they can get distracted, but they better be careful. You don't want to stumble into the postseason. And while the Pistons are falling, the Celtics are rising, who I think is the best team in the East right now. You saw them against the Cavaliers on Sunday. Well, what were your thoughts? Do you see the Celtics as now the team to beat in the East, or do
No,
you think the Pistons are still going to hold on?
I still think the Pistons, it just like in baseball, remember they used to call it dog days when, in August toward the end of the season, toward the playoffs. And the 7 game suspension for our guy Big Stu was got him out of their hookup for a little while. I still think they're the team to beat because with Boston, okay, granted, uh, you got they beat Cleveland, but Cleveland's starting center didn't play. Jared Allen, who I mean, he's been not their best player, but he's been their most impactful player since February. He's peaked at the right time, then ended up bumping knees with someone. So I don't think Boston would beat Cleveland if Cleveland's full strength unless uh, the genius Kenny Atkinson does what he does. And bro, explain this to me. Why does Dean Wade play at crunch time? Why? He can't cover and he's hesitant to shoot. Why is Dean Wade playing at crunch time?
Did
Explain
you
that
say
to me.
why? Did you say
Why?
why?
Why? Your boy, why? Your boy, why?
Well, let's go back to this. I think that the Celtics are the best team in the East, especially with Tatum coming back. And I don't think the Cavs can beat them in 7 games. Because for me, when they made the trade to get Harden, it definitely improved their offense, but their team defense is still lacking. And that's what I saw in that game against the Celtics, the team defense. So I think that will be the deciding factor in a series with them because, of course, the Celtics are not going to shoot that well all the time, and the Cavs aren't going to shoot that bad as they did in the second quarter all the time. And as Delvis, in the postseason, it comes down to the defense. Who's gonna almost said a bad word, but who's gonna step up when it comes to defense in the postseason? And those are the teams that usually win.
That's why Keon Ellis needs to be playing in crunch time instead of Dean Wade because he's an attack dog on the perimeter. He could play wing or big guard. Uh, he's not big in size, but he's big otherwise because he has a big heart. That's why somebody need to pull Kenny Atkinson's chain and say, why is Dean Wade playing at crunch time? Because he doesn't give you anything. But the Cavaliers are different defensively when they have Allen in there and when they have Ellis in there. It's a totally different dynamic. Boston, them cats ain't gonna be shooting like that forever, and they're gonna go up. But I have to rescind. I said that it should have been unanimous for Bickerstaff being coach of the year, bruh. I have to give coach of the year, and I can end it now. To my opinion, the young man from San Antonio, Johnson.
Right. Yes. I wanted to change mine too. He's done a great job. He's doing a great job. And as we know, the playoffs is a whole different animal. And San Antonio has done their thing against Oklahoma City. But I wouldn't be surprised if San Antonio went to the NBA Finals. They're young, but they're young, they're athletic, they're talented, and they have an excellent coach. And I think for me, it wouldn't be a surprise if they beat Oklahoma City in 7 games in a 7-game series for the Western Conference Finals.
And they're fearless. I think the one move they could have made was to get Chris Paul before he retired as a backup, but maybe it's a chemistry thing because their veteran is De'Aaron Fox, who's still not an old player. They don't have really any veterans on that team. But the one thing they do is they play together. They play as one. And people forget, B, people forget this was a lottery team last year. That's how they got Dylan Harper. They were a lottery team last year. Look at them now in just 1 year. I got to give Johnson coach of the year because there's no way that you would think a team this young would be this good this fast.
Delvis, there was a meeting in Washington talking about college athletic reform. They had former coaches, athletic directors, people from different schools. Nick Saban was one of the people that spoke, and Saban talked about how he wanted this committee to address the older players in college sports, especially college football. You have 26, 27-year-olds playing 18 and 19-year-olds. How we've, in this NIL era, we've gone away from academics, as we'll talk to Clark Kellogg about that when we have him on, and the transfer portal, just sort of getting a grip on this. I didn't have a problem with the meeting or the people there, but Delvis, a certain group was missing from that meeting. There were no players. There were no players. There, there were no players at this meeting to give their opinion or their side of what's going on. So, and President Trump talked about he would have an executive order to, sort of bring some sense to this, but I don't know what that would look like. But certainly something has to be done when it comes to college athletics and the way things are going right now.
Well, he need to give an executive order to go home. Just go home. Just quit. Quit being the president because you're messing up everything. He can't even run the country, but you're gonna try to run something else. You have to just know your lane, and that's what I don't like. Um, there needs to be some reform, yes, but but you have to be careful with the government. It's just like, to me, and not to go dot deep, but to me, it's always been, it's just like with black folks in politics. They want you to do the work, but don't want you to be involved in any decisions or any leading. You know what I'm saying? Get to it. Look what happened with Jasmine Crockett. Yeah, the Democratic Party love to see her, raise hell and do this and do that, but them same people wouldn't support her as senator. The same thing happens with a lot of these organizations. They want black people to be the product, but not the ones that are making the decisions to improve the product. It's senseless not to include any players and ask them what do they think. Because, bro, it's just like any organization you've ever worked for. And I learned this from Peter B. Lewis, man, the former head of Progressive. What Peter B. Lewis used to do is periodically he would just walk, and it was before Progressive had the big expansion, because I worked before they really expanded like they are now. But he would take time and go to sit with different, because we separate ourselves in different groups. He would sit with the brothers one day and the Asians one day and white folk. And fortunately, my cousin Norman was his bodyguard, so I had a chance to converse with him. I
Mm-hmm.
said, Peter, why? It's great that you making us feel included, but why do you talk to people, out here? He says the front line always has the answers to your problems. He said if you never talk to the front line, the people who are encountering the problems, how are you ever going to solve them? You can't be in the ivory tower telling them what to do and they have the answers. So you have to have an open flow of communication with your front line. That's exactly why Progressive grew to what you see now. That is exactly what the NC2A and Congress, just stay home, stay out of it, because you can't even run this country. Gas $3.50 a gallon,
And
but
going up.
and going up. But just communicate with the frontline people, the players. It's nonsensical to exclude the players, bro. That's how I feel about that.
Well, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. We're going to go to our interview with Clark Kellogg, Cleveland's own, and we'll
Oh,
be
but
right. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, before that, B, you promised the people a big announcement. Go ahead and tell
Well,
them what the announcement is.
let me give them that announcement after Clark Kellogg.
Well, we got to do it twice anyway, so we
You want
might as
to do
well
it
do it
twice?
once. Yeah, do it twice. So
All
nice, we
right,
got to
all
do
right,
it twice.
all right. You twisted my arm. Oh, okay, I'll make that announcement. So on March 26th, Thursday, March 26th, we're going to do a live broadcast. We're going to do a live show from the Charter House Grill. at 991 East 185th Street, and they are our first and most prominent sponsor. So we want to go there, have some good food. There'll be happy hour. We're going to have some special guests that we're going to announce later, but let's just say they're from the sports world and they're from the entertainment world. Uh, do I want to go and say comedy or do I want to say acting? Which one, Delvis? Or both?
Both.
Yeah, both. So we'll get more details in our show next week, and probably even prior to that, if you go to our YouTube channel, we'll have a flyer or something like that up. But we like to see everybody in person that are here in Cleveland, or if you're visiting Cleveland, we definitely like to see you there. So, all right, so let's go to our interview. Looking forward to this with Clark Kellogg, who's an analyst on CBS Sports, as he's getting ready for the NCAA tournament. We'll be right back with Clark, the greatest high school basketball player out of Cleveland, and because of Delvis, I must say, from the illustrious class of '79. We have Clark Kellogg, who's now one of the great voices of college basketball here on our show. Thank you, Clark, for spending time with us. How you doing, man?
I'm great. Great to be with you always, Branson. Count it a blessing whenever we get a chance to chop it up. Delvis, I know it's been a minute since we've chopped it up, but looking forward to the conversation, fellas.
Well, let's jump right in with keep it a little local. Miami of Ohio, 31-0.
Yeah.
There's conversation that they didn't have a tough schedule. If they lose in the MAC tournament, that they shouldn't get invited to the dance. What do you think, Clark? Are
It's
they deserving?
good. It's good. They're clearly deserving. It's good debate fodder and radio talk show material, but it's a done deal. This has already been put in the freezer when they got to the end of the regular season unbeaten. I don't think a one-loss team, even if they weren't to win the MAC Conference Championship, has ever been kept out of the field of 68. So I don't think the committee's looking to make history in that regard. There's legitimacy around the schedule, but there's also some reasons for it. But you look at some of the other metrics, and you don't take any one metric in and of itself. You look at the totality of all the metrics. And the first metric you look at is wins. That's the very first default metric, wins. And then you take a look at the other metrics, predictive and wins above the bubble. It's called the WAB now, WAB, where you look at a team's schedule and say, what would a bubble team do with this schedule? How many wins might they get? And in that metric, Miami far exceeds what a typical bubble team would do with their schedule. So you start looking at those things in totality. And then I'm a big observation guy. I watch tons and tons and tons of games. That's a really good basketball team. They're the best. They're probably the best. They are the best offensive team statistically. When you look at field goal percentage and efficiency, they're right there at the top in some of those numbers. So it's a no-brainer for me. And I've got a bias towards really elite mid-major teams anyway, and I've always got a special place for anybody representing Ohio. But that wouldn't affect the reality of how I would make my decision for them. I think they're in the tournament. I don't know what seed they'll get, and they can actually get another championship if they win the MAC tournament. So, but I think they're clearly in and deserve to be there.
Clark, tell us about some individual players on Miami of Ohio. What makes them good? Why have they made so much noise with this undefeated
Well, you know
record?
what? They've got really skilled players, man. Peter Suter, he's a really versatile. He reminds me of an old school Bill Bradley. He's about 6'5", can make tough shots, can create for other people. They've got some flat out lasers shooting the basketball. Elmer is a really strong combo guard, can get it inside and out. Skowjack is really fearless. They've got some size. Anton Woolfolk, he played at Rutgers earlier in his career. But they play extremely well together. They space the floor, and they're lethal from the three-point line. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They're not a physically imposing team, but they've got enough juice with their perimeter guys to make plays. They probably play about an 8-man rotation. But they're fun to watch, man. I've watched them multiple times. And depending on their matchup, with these double-digit seeds, it's always about matchups in terms of how they might fare once they're in the field. But this is one of the more entertaining, fun, explosive teams to watch. And also, I think after they won that game against OU on Friday, fellas, that was an overtime game. I think they've won 9 of their 31 games have either been in overtime or one possession games.
Wow.
And so when you do that, some folks might say they've been lucky. I say you're learning how to win and not panic at crunch time in tight games, which can be valuable in the tournament, as you both well know.
Clark, I think, I don't think it's prejudicial. I just think it's actual. Our year graduated 1979, the illustrious class of 1979, was the greatest freshman. I mean, people that graduated in 79, it was the greatest freshman class of all time. When you look at yourself, Isaiah Thomas, Dominique Wilkins, and the list goes on and on and on, James Worthy.
Yeah.
This class this year seems like they can rival yours. I mean, Cameron Boozer and the rest of these guys. Talk about the freshmen and their impacting, because Duke is the number 1 team led by a freshman. You have other teams. Arizona starts 3 freshmen. So talk about the freshman class this year.
Well, obviously I'm biased and partial to 79, but I will say this class has exceeded any class in the history of college basketball as far as the impact and the level of impact the freshmen have had on winning teams. We're going to see a lot of these guys in the tournament because their teams have won. Now, our freshman class coming out of high school, I wouldn't take a back seat to anybody for what that class did as players in high school, what that class did in college, and what that class did at the highest level, the NBA. I don't think there's a rival for our class. This class clearly has a chance to exceed that. They've already exceeded in the college games, Elvis, because I think we've got more freshmen averaging 15-plus points across the country than we've had in a long, long time. Maybe historically. I'll have to go back and look at some of our researchers' numbers. But I do know, as I've watched games, and I watch across the spectrum from November till now, as much as we talk about the ones that are going to be high draft choices, there's another layer of about 30 freshmen that are doing major work at some of the mid-majors, and the depth and quality of impact with these first-year guys. Now, some of them have, taken an extra year of prep school, but they're first year in college. Some are European, but nonetheless, I've been at this microphone thing for well over 3 decades, and I can't recall any class of this caliber at the top, middle, and even guys that might be in the top 60 are really doing some work. And we'll see some of them on a couple of these mid-major teams. This kid, Alex Wilkins, playing at Furman. They just won their conference tournament last year. He's averaging 18 points, 5 boards, 5 assists, fearless. They had 34 in the semifinal of their conference tournament. There are a number of other first-year guys outside of the Petersons and the Bonzas and Boozers and Amen at Tennessee. And we got a bunch of them in the Big Ten. Wagler at Illinois, Mirkovich at Illinois. I mean, you can go on and on. Man, I got a list. I call them neon newbies, and I'm looking at my list right now. It's about 40. It's about 45 deep, 45, 50.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've added guys in the last 2 weeks.
Wow.
Added guys in the last 2 weeks. Yeah. It's
Let's
amazing,
see that
man.
list, Clark. Let's see that list, Clark. Hold that
Okay.
list
All right.
up.
I'll show it up. I'll show it up. So I'll get him up here to you. Those guys right there. And the ones highlighted in yellow are the ones that everybody's been talking about. And then I'll kind of rank them in my own mind. But yeah, while I got this up, this is kind of I'll give you guys just a little peek. This is kind of my basketball Bible that I use all year long. So any game that I watch, there's usually a 3 or 4 sentence summation of who won, how they won, when the game was played, who the star players are. And I do that for 75, 80% of the games that I watch, so that it's a reference book for me as we go through the season. And it really serves me well as we get ready for the madness of March, because I've watched a lot of the mid-major teams prior to this weekend. I've watched a ton of them, and I have some notes on some of them, and we'll get a chance to see which ones are going to be in the field. We already got, I think, 8 automatic qualifiers
Right.
already have scanned their ticket, and we'll continue the acceleration of that leading up to Selection Sunday.
Clark, the Big Ten has been in a drought as far as basketball. Haven't won a title since 2000. I know Michigan looks good. Illinois looks pretty good. Will this, or could this be the year that the drought since 2000, that's 26 years, that the drought could end?
It certainly has a great chance. I mean, Michigan is one of the co-favorites to win it. I put them, Duke, Arizona, and Florida a notch above everybody else right now.
Okay.
I think those 4 teams, the body of work, their physicality, their talent, their coaching, I think puts them, there's a separation there that I draw. Those 4 teams are equal to me. I saw Arizona in person late January against West Virginia, and at that time I thought the Wildcats were the best team. They're men, they're physical. Even though they start 3 freshmen, they are physical, and they play a physical brand. They are trying to punish you in the paint. They don't shoot a bunch of threes. They make some, but they don't shoot a lot of threes. They got a great point guard in Jaden Bradley. He may win the Cousy Award. Braden Burris is phenomenal as a second guard. They play a strong 8-man rotation. They're really, really good. Michigan, obviously, dominant. Has been dominant all year. And that front line with Adai Mara, Morez Johnson, Yaxel Lindeborg. I mean, Florida can play with them on the front line. They've got an elite front line that has championship rings. Now, people think about the guards they lost last year. But that front line, they won a championship. All those guys are back. Thomas Hawk, Chenyelu, Condon, Hanglotten, all 4 of those guys are back and better. And they added 2 transfer guards. So I put those 4 teams, again, not in any particular order. Duke, actually, I'll do it alphabetically. Arizona, Duke, Florida, Michigan. Then you go UConn, Houston, Illinois, and some other teams that I would throw in that next tier, probably 6 to 8 in the next tier. And then you got some teams that could surprise in that 3rd tier. But those 4 could very well show up in Indy, because I think they will be your number 1 seeds come Selection Sunday.
Well, Clark, you talked about the favorites, but in March, it's also about the Cinderellas.
Yeah.
Who are some of the Cinderellas besides Miami of Ohio? That we should look out for?
Well, I just mentioned the Furman team, the Furman Paladins. They lost their conference championship game last year, won it last night. They've got size. One of the things you always look for with the mid-major teams, do they have positional size to go up against the teams they might face in their first-round matchup? And Furman has a couple of 6'10" guys that can play. I mentioned the kid Alex Wilkins, their leading scorer, who's been terrific. They've got a senior that comes off the bench, Thomas House. They're good. They're well-coached, really efficient offensive team. Not a high-octane team, but run good stuff. So I would put them in that category. I tell you, Nolan Smith, the younger Nolan Smith's dad, the late Derek Smith, was part of, I think he might have been a year ahead of me, so maybe part of a high school class of 80, but played on that Louisville national championship team in 80. But his son, Nolan, is the head coach at Tennessee State and has the Tigers in the tournament in his first year as the head coach. And they've got a player, Travis Harper, who looks like he could play at any D1, any high major school, can score. They shoot a bunch of threes, really active and athletic. I like St. Louis, although they've hit a bit of a skid here lately. They've lost a handful of games here, and they had started, I think they were one of the last unbeaten teams in the country, and have hit a little bit of an air pocket. But they play 9, 10 guys, double-digit minutes, shoot a lot of threes, have decent athleticism on the wing. So those are a few teams outside of the Power Four that you could take a peek at that might be able to be surprises in that first round.
Clark, for years you've been a part of this game as a player, as a student of the game, as an analyst. What part of March still surprises you?
The fact that it's unpredictable and it always delivers something for everybody. That's not surprising. I think that's as much a part of the secret sauce of this event that gets everybody excited about it. I mean, I've done it. This will be my 29th Final Four, and it never fails to disappoint, man. The games, whether we get 4 number 1 seeds in the Final Four like we did last year, and in 2008, that's the only times it's happened since the field was expanded to 64. We've had 4 number 1 seeds in the Final Four. And then we've had, the George Masons show up, the Loyola of Chicago show up. Sister Jean became a great story in 2018. You just don't know where the story is going to come from. You don't know where the drama or the big game or the big moment. You just know it's going to happen somewhere, and it's going to captivate you. But I kind of like this week leading up to Selection Sunday. That last weekend when we saw that 4 teams had qualified by winning their conference tournaments, that to me is the beginning of the excitement. And that's what I look forward to, because that's kind of a unique stage for the mid-majors that play their conference tournaments that first weekend. The Missouri Valley, the ASUN, the Big South. High Point is another team. Speaking of the Big South, High Point Panthers. They've got a really nice squad, high scoring. Got guys that can make plays, so they'll be a challenging first round matchup for one of the big boys.
Clark, we've seen the impact of NIL as far as with the football. A lot of players are deciding to stay in school, and it seems like they're going to make more money staying in school that extra year, and it's kind of helped the competitive level of different teams. Do you foresee that happening with this influx of great talent, particularly freshmen? Because almost the entire first round could be freshmen if they decided to go. So how do you think the NIL money will affect players returning to school?
Well, I think it's had a huge impact, Delvis, from the standpoint of it's long overdue, first and foremost. NIL should have always been available to student athletes. Earning a scholarship in your sport shouldn't have precluded you from monetizing your name, image, and likeness if you had the desire to and the ability to. So NIL was long overdue. It certainly landed along with the transfer portal in a way that created and still has some of that ripple chaos effect that needs to be corralled. But I do think it's impacted the quality of teams across the country. Teams are clearly older and better. And it's a combination, the ability to transfer and also this influx of outstanding freshman talent, recognizing they could have the experience of being in college and then also be paid and then move on to their pro opportunity when they felt it was right. But I do think it's impacted the quality of play in a positive way. Now, the question is, when you see multiple transfers, are these kids graduating? Are they getting degrees? I mean, that's the exchange. It's your athletic ability for the opportunity to have your education paid for. And I do think at some point we'll take a look, and we might not be happy with what's unfolded in terms of the educational exchange, the education exchange for ability. Some of these kids, we know most will not be pros. Many will be able to play pro basketball and maybe make a night. You do get a pretty good hit of money. I mean, the money is real and it can give you a head start. But we know money doesn't always guarantee success.
Right.
And it's not always sustained, but it does give you a jump. And I'm all for that. But I'm also for the education component. I think we've lost some of that in the process of these kids just bouncing from school to school, chasing the ball and not maybe preparing themselves. But we'll see. We'll see what the data shows in time. You know, I think there'll be some collateral damage that's unpleasant and disheartening, but that's part of living in a free capitalistic world where you have a chance to make choices and deal with the consequence and handle the consequences of the choices. But by and large, I think it's good in terms of what it's meant to the game between the lines. Yeah.
Clark, one thing that is peculiar to me as far as like the NBA G League, we're seeing, well, I think one person was declared ineligible, but we've seen some players play in G League games and then get some college eligibility, which I'm thinking the G League is a professional league. Do you think that some people are going to take advantage of that loophole, or should they just close that? And the G League is professional ball, and if you playing in there, you're ineligible to play college ball any further.
Well, there are clear eligibility standards that the NCAA has had in place. And in most of the court cases, they've been upheld. Because once you sign a contract or play in a professional game, you're no longer eligible for college.
Correct.
And so there have been a few exceptions, Delvis. I don't think it's going to be a trend. I think the courts have continued to side with the NCAA on this matter as well. They should.
Right.
If you choose to leave, you don't have to go to college, okay? You
Right.
don't have to. But you can't go to the pros and then say, well, let me see if I can find a way back if it doesn't work out.
Right.
So I think ultimately, again, the vast majority of cases have been ruled in the NCAA's favor because they have a clear standard. If you haven't enrolled in college and you don't sign a pro contract, you've got a certain time to enroll in college and you'll have a certain amount of eligibility. But if you violate any of those tenets and then try to come back, in a couple of the cases where eligibility was granted and it was really kind of temporary, it was a favorable judge in some state.
Right.
So again, I don't think it's a trend. I think the eligibility standards should be exactly what they are, and that ultimately this won't be happening, particularly as these few exceptions get reversed. Bediako at Alabama is the one that comes most to mind. There was a kid in West Virginia too. A West Virginia alum was on the bench and, offered order to stay, temporary restraining order, so he had temporary eligibility. But ultimately, the rules are pretty ironclad around eligibility. And even, I think they'll even be fortified as Congress, the president of the NCAA is attempting to continue to at least invoke Congress's involvement in trying to help, not run the NCAA, but give it a little assistance around some of these loopholes. And if that happens, then clearly it'll be ironclad and we won't see an influx of guys trying to come back.
Clark, Delvis and I have been going back and forth in terms of expansion for the tournament.
Yeah. Where do you guys land on it?
Well, I'm for it to add teams, and Delvis is like, no, keep it the way it is.
Yeah.
Where do you envision expansion happening, and where do you sit with that?
I think we'll have a small expansion, either 4 or 8 teams. And remember, the last time we expanded was 2011 when we went from 64 to 68. Right. We went from, I think, 48 or 50 to 64 in 85. And we went until 2011. So what is that? 26 years before we expanded again in 2011. And at that time, part of the rationale, in addition to wanting more games and more revenue, part of the rationale was the number of Division I teams had increased. And in most of the NCAA's championships and the other sports, there's about a 20 to 25% eligibility ratio for postseason in the other sports. When we were at 64, because the number of NCAA Division I teams had grown, we were hovering around 18 or 19% playing in the postseason, in the NCAA tournament. So it made sense to add that additional 4, which has become the first 4, which has been a really cool thing for Dayton and those teams that go there. I think that's a great place. They've had it since its inception. It's a part of the tournament, even though people continue to want to refer to it as a play-in game. So now we've got a similar situation, guys. We've got 365 Division I teams. It's 365. And there's 1 or 2 that are I think that counts the ones that are in transition mode. They might not be eligible for their tournament this year, but they're transitioning to D1. So 365, if you take 20% of 365, that's 73. If you take 20% of 365, that would be 73 teams. If you added 4, we'd be at 72. If you added 8, we'd be at 76. So that would get you to the 20%, 22% of teams playing in the postseason, in the NCAA tournament. And that rationale makes sense to me. Now, I know there's the economic component. TV networks want additional games. I mean, we're part of that CBS and Turner. We carry the tournament. So I understand that. But I do think the rationale from a number standpoint and giving more kids an opportunity to taste their one shining moment, because we've expanded the number of D1 teams, and I think it makes sense, perhaps. We've got a pretty tight window, though, as far as the calendar goes. So whatever expansion is, it can't be significant because the window we have, these 3 weeks of March, and because of our network's a commitment to the Masters and the full sports calendar, I don't see it going beyond what they're talking about, 72 or 76. And I do think it'll happen. It could happen as soon as 27, but I think it's fairly inevitable. There are a lot of people that are for it. Yeah. And I'm gotten on board. Initially, I was opposed. I didn't want to. I mean, I thought when we went from 64 to 68, that was enough, and it made sense. And I've slowly warmed to the rationale around the math of going to 72 or 78, 76. Yeah.
Delvis, I'm gonna have a follow up to this question to Clark.
Go ahead,
Clark, how concerned are you about the growing influence of sports gambling on
Oh,
college
man.
basketball?
You know, Charlie Baker, our current NCAA president, he came on board about 3 years ago. He started raising the flag on this almost as soon as he got on board because he was going around the campuses and watching all kinds of sports and interacting with student athletes, and they were telling him of what they were experiencing. I was not aware of how rampant it is and how much of an impact and effect it has on the student athletes with some of the gamblers having access to them. I mean, social media is wonderful, but it opens a lot of doors that create potential problems. And so that whole online platform for gamblers and the money involved, I mean, obviously the pro leagues are endorsing the gambling sites. That's an adult choice. There's unbelievable revenue that comes from having those platforms advertised during games. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of it, but I understand why it necessarily isn't restricted because it's legal in the vast majority of states. But it's a concern. It's a real concern because of the damage it can do to lives and the pressure, the added pressure it puts on some of these kids. And we've seen, heck, I think we had a case recently, 25, 30 kids were found to be ineligible because they were fixing games and trying to grab a little money. And it's a great risk. Yeah, so it's a concern. It's a real concern. And I think the president is really attempting with all his power and leverage to tamp it down, President Baker, and to get help from the various constituents to try to really keep an eye on it and try to mitigate it and control it as best they can.
Is there anything, excuse me, anything the NCAA can do, especially with these kids getting targeted by gamblers? Is there anything that they?
I think education is the main thing, and then just the education, the awareness, continuing to help. And I think I didn't see the article, but I just saw a headline. There's a platform that I think the NCAA is going to employ to even better monitor bad actors in the space. So I think that's where you start, having folks monitor it on the outside externally, and then if you can have some folks on the ground keeping track of it too, that's key.
Clark, this my last question it'll be kind of lighthearted a little bit. When we were in high school, like I said, when I first saw you play, I was glad I got cut. I'm glad that Kennedy cut me because you were a menace. I was like, whoa, I got cut. Thank goodness. But I remember one time you and I and Branson got together. We ran into Vince Brookins from Collinwood and Aparicio Curry from our school, the Johnson guys from Glenville. Talk about some of the rivalries you had in high school with some of the guys, Tyrone Crawford and Shaw. Talk about some of the rivalries you had and your memories.
Oh, great memories, man. You know, when you're coming up and you've fallen in love with the game like I did at 9, 10 years old, you're thinking about how can I get to the highest level? And competition is part of that. And having guys that you look up to as a young guy and then you get on the same court and level with them at some point, you're thinking about, at least my mindset was, how can I distinguish myself in this group. And we had terrific players coming up. Colin Irish, huge rivalry with Cathedral Latin during that time. I mean, they were our nemesis until my senior year in high school. You mentioned the Johnsons. Crawford actually was at St. Joe's before he transferred away. The Franklin brothers at Cleveland Heights. John Adams, Tyrone Evans. I mean, you just think about all of the high school guys that you played out in the suburbs, Terry Teachout and other guys. It was a really, really great time in Cleveland high school basketball during that period. I mean, there were a lot of good players and a lot of good teams, a lot of players that helped me raise my level, and hopefully I helped them sharpen theirs too. But great pride, positive vibes, and remembering how I grew up and the influence that I got, the impact that I was able to have, and the influence I got from other players. And then also my dad, obviously, my late dad was really the kind of foundation of my development as a player. Then I love the game, man. I still do. I mean, I loved it. I tell people how blessed I was to grab hold of something like basketball that I had an ability for and an aptitude for, and was able to really help channel a lot of my energy and direction in a positive way. I mean, I was watching it, talking about it, playing it. It was a driving force, and still is to a different degree. But to have something that you're gifted in, be able to produce really good fruit in your character and in your life is a gift. When you can find that and then grab it and go after it, it takes a lot of negative things off the table and puts a lot of positive things in front of you. And that's what basketball has done for me. And the memories of competition and other players and the losses, the wins, the challenges, all of that is part of the fabric of who I am. And I'm grateful for it. I don't know if I can ever repay the game. I really don't. I don't think I can ever
Branson,
repay the game. Yeah.
I lied, Branson.
No, go ahead.
Mr. Kellogg, because my mentor, Arthur Dean, played ball with your dad, and we saw how much of an influence, positive influence that you were with your son, Nick. Could you just talk real quick about having Black fathers and close to their sons, mentoring them in sports and mentoring them in life? Because you've been an outstanding dad, not just to Nick, but to all your kids. And Mr. Kellogg was a great mentor, and leader and father to you. So can you talk about that, please, real quick?
Yeah, I would just talk about it in general. Obviously, in the Black community, I mean, that's significant. We know there's been a challenge and a problem on a lot of levels, but fatherhood in general is one of the greatest blessings and responsibilities and privileges that any man can have. And for me, my foundation is in God through faith in Christ, and everything that I attempt to be and do is grounded in that relationship. I've got a Heavenly Father. He's blessed me with the opportunity to be an earthly father, and I want to honor him in doing that. And my dad was impactful in my life in a lot of ways. So much of who I am and what I hold dear to are things that I heard and saw in him, his presence, his consistency. He wasn't perfect. None of us are. But presence is powerful, man. Proximity and presence is really, and I've grown to appreciate and acknowledge that more and more, being there, trying to be engaged, learning through your mistakes, admitting when you mess up, and trying to give your kids a foundation of consistency. And I saw that, through my dad. And then obviously I wanted to be that for our kids. And then having a wonderful partner. I mean, my wife, Rosie, we met when I was a freshman in college. We got married after my rookie year in the NBA. We'll be 43 years married in July, man. And it's you don't do it by yourself. And I'm so grateful that I have a partner in her that's helped me be better. She's, calls me out in my shortcomings and mess ups and gives it to me directly, and yet is always with me and for me. So all of that, man. But my faith has driven a lot of how I try to be in every space. And I just thank God that I've had the privilege. Now I'm a granddad, the privilege of being a dad and the blessing of being a granddad, Poppy, to 5 grandchildren, 2 girls that are 9 and boys that are 5, 2 and 2 months. So, man, I tell you, but it's a great responsibility and privilege. And I don't take it lightly. I mean, I really try to be a father, obviously to our kids, but to the kids that I encounter. How can I have a positive impact? Even if it's just in an exchange, I would go to other kids' games and events just so they could see another adult who was pulling for them. You know, that's part of our role as fathers too, to be present for some of the other kids in our communities and in our circle. And so, yeah, it's one of the great privileges and blessings, and I really cherish it and try to uphold it the right way, in spite of my human frailties.
Hey, Clark, well, we thank you so much for joining us on our show. And no, as Delva said when we started, you're going to get really, really busy. So,
Yeah.
so tell our audience, when does the program start? I think it's Sunday. This coming Sunday.
Selection Sunday. We'll be on. Obviously, we'll have wall-to-wall games. We'll have the Big Ten championship game. What else do we have Sunday? I think we've got 2 championship games on Sunday, and then the selection. So maybe 3. It all runs together. But we'll have triple headers on Saturday, triple header on Sunday, leading into the 6 to 7 o'clock selection show on CBS, and that's when we'll announce the bracket. It'll be me and Seth Davis, Bruce Pearl, and Adam Zucker handling that. And then you can start working on your brackets after that. We'll try to give you little nuggets of knowledge to maybe pick an upset or 2.
Quick on the just for entertainment purposes only.
Yeah.
What's some advice you give people as far as their brackets?
Brackets, a couple of things. One, if you can find, well, the 5-12 matchup usually is a pretty good one that's right historically for upset. That 12 seed, finding the right 12 seed, there's usually one that advances there. Don't try to pick too many upsets, though, especially in the first couple of rounds. Usually chalk is going to prevail. The committee does a good job seeding those teams, so probably 75 to 85% of your picks need to be chalk in those first 2 rounds. And then after that, you can start maybe picking some mild upsets. That's kind of a general thing. Teams that can make threes always have a chance to pull the upset. So do your homework on those mid-majors and find ones that make 9 or more threes a game at about 37 or better percentage. If you can find a couple of those squads, they always have a chance.
Clark, get some rest. You're going to get really busy,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we'll be watching you. Yeah,
I'll
we'll
be
watching
on
you.
that one. I'll be on that one-way box, fellas.
Thank you,
All
my
righty,
brother.
man.
See you
All
soon,
right.
man.
Appreciate
All right,
you
Clark.
guys. Yeah.
Take
right.
it easy, man.
Yeah.
Want to thank my fellow 1979 graduate, Clark Kellogg, for a wonderful, in-depth interview. And he gave us a lot of game about what's going on with the NCAA tournament. And, bruh, I'm excited about this tournament because truly it's going to be a free-for-all. And freshmen.
It's going to be a great tournament. For me, it just comes down to Michigan and Duke. And you know how I feel about Duke.
Yeah, you
And
love
I love their graduates. And I'm all about the Big Ten. So although in football I'm not rooting for Michigan, but when it comes to basketball, I'm behind them, especially because they're the Big Ten. So I'm looking forward to it, man. And one other thing we talked to Clark about was the gambling. And what concerns me, Delvis, more than anything, is how these gamblers go after these kids on social media or sometime maybe even in person because they didn't hit a shot that they expected, or even a football player, especially a kicker, missed the kick, and how they're presenting death threats to these kids. And I hate that. And if anybody is caught doing something like that, it needs to go to jail, making threats because you lost a bet. Get out of here.
That's a society we live in, bro. It's the society we live in. But until the sporting community gets a hold of this gambling issue, but they should have known, even with fantasy for sports, you were getting this. And these people, a lot of them wasn't winning anything, but they were still going off over fantasy. Right. Now that you have, then when they started getting a lot of money in fantasy, you've seen this. It's been a gradual uptick. Bruh, they better get a hold of it, but they're getting so much money for gambling. they won't stop it. But they've opened Pandora's box. They've
Wide
exposed,
open.
yeah, wide
Wide,
open.
wide open. So before I ask you what you're watching this week, I'm gonna tell you what I'm watching, and I'm watching in person. I'm going to the MAC tournament. I want to see Miami of Ohio up close. I want to see everything that Clark's been talking about, and I'm going to be there all weekend, and I'm looking forward to it, man. And I love the MAC tournament. A lot of people come out, especially when OU and Kent State are playing. So I'm looking forward to the tournament. And I'm looking forward to seeing Miami of Ohio. How about you?
I'll be home watching the tournaments. This is the most exciting time of year, probably of any sports. The basketball tournaments, as far as not necessarily the big tournament, but just the conference tournaments. Exciting. I mean, it gives you everything that you would want, far as the dramatics of sport. I love it, man. So that's what I'll be doing this weekend and trying to get my voice back together.
Yeah, you'll get it. You'll get it together. So
And
again, March 26th, we're doing a live show at the Charter House Grill with special guests that we will name later, and we're looking forward to seeing you all there. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Delvis, get your voice back.
yeah, and hey, everybody, like we say, telephone, tell a friend. The brothers, known as the Sports Brothers, are back again. We would love to see you in the place, and congratulations. The Sports Brothers. We've reached a milestone in just a few weeks. We're at over 1,000 subscribers. So we want to thank you all from the bottom of our hearts, and hopefully you all tell somebody, and they tell someone, because we just want to provide the best service and the best coverage that we can do. So thank you all for letting us reach our milestone.
Yes, and thank you. Okay, Delvis. Well, that's it until next week. We're working on another great guest, and we looking forward to seeing you all so we can talk sports, talk our ish, and enjoy and continue to enjoy the show.
And Bruce Pearl, you working with my dude Clark. I don't like you, man. I know you're undercover. You might be on top of the cover, bigot. Anyway, but be mad because I hope that Miami makes the tournament. So that's going to be some drama right there. B watching what happens uh, with Miami, where they're seated, because you know this hater is going to complain. He's going to complain. So
Oh,
that's going to be funny too.
that is going to be funny. So, all right, we're here at the end. So, you've been watching the Sports Brothers, and
Welcome to the family.
looking for the perfect way to unwind after work? Slide through to Charter House Grill for happy hour, Tuesday through Fridays, 4 to 7 p.m. Enjoy $4 off signature cocktails, top shelf liquor, appetizers, and all wine, plus $2 off all beer. Great drinks, great food, grown folk vibes. That's happy hour at Charter House Grill, 991 East 185th Street, Cleveland. Pull up, unwind, we'll take care of the rest.